Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bienvenue ce soir à Singapour et à la pause déjeuner en Europe. Welcome to our 17th episode of Living and Working, which today is fully dedicated to Singapore. As you all know, these kind of webinars are meant to be a friendly and interactive space in which our guests will share with us their experiences, their views on a life and a career in Singapore. I suggest you to open up your video to make it more friendly, more interactive. We will have a first part in which our guests will intervene and explain to us their experiences, and then we will have a more interactive part in which you will be able to ask your questions via the chat or raising a hand. So I'm very happy to see our guests and I really thank them for their time. And now, before starting the webinar, let me introduce you to Mariana Lozada, who is the head of Sciences Po Université Paris-Cité and INALCO office in Singapore, and she will explain to us the presence of Sciences Po in Singapore. Mariana.
Thank you so much, Camila. Thank you for inviting me, and also thank you for organizing this webinar today. So good morning or good afternoon and good evening for those depending where you're in France or in Singapore. As Camila said, I'm Sciences Po's representative here in Singapore. It's been 7 years that we started this cooperation with the National University of Singapore. I mean, I'm being based and working in Singapore since 2016. My roles are basically to do outreach, not only in Singapore, but in Southeast Asia. So I work in other countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Malaysia, etc. Doing outreach, recruiting students. I'm also in charge of academic cooperation and scientific cooperation. For example, we have a double degree program with the National University of Singapore, in which we recruit every year 10 students. And we also recruit a lot of students from Singapore. So we'll have more and more alumni every year, both for our undergraduate programs or for our master's programs. And we do all sort of scientific and academic collaborations with the university here. To give you an example, this week I've been very, very busy with some faculty members from Sciences Po and also from Université Paris-Cité. That is a university, it's a partner university in Paris of Sciences Po. We had a delegation who is establishing a collaboration in the field of the environment with NUS Environmental Research Institute. So we have been having workshops, panel sessions that were open to the public. So these kind of events are also open to the alumni community, and meeting with local authorities like the Urban Redevelopment Authority, because in this case it was related to the environment and urban planning. But of course, depending on the area that we are working on, we are in touch with different government agencies. So I'm also the basically person to go to if you are an alumni looking for opportunities in Singapore, because I can put you in touch with the rest of our community here. Well, Gregor will tell you more about our alumni association as well. So if you like to explore opportunities in Singapore, please know that Sciences Po has a representation here. We have also representation offices in other places, in China, in India, in Nairobi, in Kenya, and soon in Dakar as well, in Senegal. So feel free to get in touch, and we'll be happy to connect you with networks here and to help you to understand a little bit more the local landscape. So that's all for me. I will give the floor to Gregor, who is the president of our Alumni Association in Singapore, but I'm very happy to respond to your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mariana. So yeah, thanks for joining this call. We are very happy that, you know, some Sciences Po students, Sciences Po alumni in Paris and all over the world actually is interested by our beautiful country. So I am Gregor Aucher. I am president of the Sciences Po Alumni Association. This is an association that has been created around 2007 and 2008, on which I am one of the co-founders. I think at that stage, actually, it was very small, around 20, 30 people. I think today also we cannot really officially count how much we are. We estimate our number of members around 300 people. We have actually a social media presence in LinkedIn, in Facebook. We are also, you know, especially for the people here, a WhatsApp group since recently. So our role is, of course, actually to try to connect all the alumni members and try to help each other. So I think our main goal is to organize actually some events, sometime networking, sometime with a content. We try to gather generally on a quarterly basis. We had the chance actually last year to welcome Sciences Po director actually. So it was a very nice actually event we had at the Fullerton Bay Hotel. I think close to last summer. So yeah, more than happy actually to if you are interested by Singapore, if you are looking for some position here to connect with some of our alumni. We are also trying to create a bit like it exists in Africa, more and more network at the Asian regional level as well. So yeah, people, you know, whether they are expatriate or they are also, you know, more Asian alumni actually is really connected in the region. So don't hesitate to reach us for that purpose as well.
Thank you very much, Gregor. And I put the link on the page, so don't hesitate to register to receive more information or to contact the team of the Alumni Association. Now I would like to introduce you to Dr. Yvonne Guo, who is State Counsel in the International Affairs Division, Attorney General's Chambers. Could you please tell us about your story and what brought you back to Singapore? Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Yvonne. First, I want to say that whatever I'm saying today is my personal capacity and doesn't represent my organization. Just a disclaimer out of the way. So I was born in Singapore. I am Singaporean. I studied in Sciences Po between 2006 to 2011. And then at that time, you know, I considered, should I stay in France? Should I go back? And then I thought, okay, and then I got a position at the University of Singapore as a research assistant to the Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, which is also very close to Sciences Po in its research focus on public policy, international affairs. And then because I was in the international affairs program doing Sécurité Internationale in Sciences Po, I decided, okay, this is close to my heart, I will do that. So I came back to Singapore after graduating in 2011. I worked for 1 year for the Dean, and then I decided to stay on and do my PhD. So 1 year became 6 years. And then in 2019, I joined the Attorney General's Chambers. I do international law as part of my day job. And I'm also a member of the Sciences Po Alumni Association. So I've been involved in many activities and also helped organize some of the activities here. It's a very interesting community. I feel it's very diverse. We have a good mix of locals as well as French and people from many other countries, including Mariana. I mean, so I'm very glad that Sciences Po has such a good representation in Singapore. Yeah, it's a nice community to have, and yeah, I would be happy to answer any of the questions that you may have from a local perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Now, Gregor, what brought you to Singapore?
Actually, my career has been toward Asia. After Sciences Po, I joined actually the French embassy in China, especially the economic mission, to do some work about regulation and lobbying the Chinese government at the French level and European level. Then, since I help a lot of financial institutions in China, I had the opportunity to join BNP Paribas in Hong Kong. And with the financial crisis, basically, I get, since I was very junior, I get a nice promotion in Singapore because my boss was too expensive. So I am in Singapore since 2008. And actually, ironically, how the association has been created is my ex-boss, basically Cedric Crow, who are also a Sciences Po alumni, actually try to do something with this association, and never at the time and say, 2 hours before leaving Singapore for good, say, you should do something about that. So yes, basically, essentially the job, but also my family. I am from Normandy. Our family of entrepreneur and in furniture. And basically they brought me to Singapore and to all around Asia, all my youngness, and I think it's what probably attracted me at the beginning.
Thank you, Gregor, and maybe we will come back to your actual position, but maybe later. And Mariana, since you also are an alumna from Sciences Po, what brought you to Singapore? It was Sciences Po, or it was more your curiosity?
Well, I was also very interested in Asia, and I also I've done my PhD at Sciences Po, and I focus on the internationalization of higher education. So this is basically where I'm, the area I'm working in right now. So I was looking at, policies towards international students and internationalizations in France and the UK, and how they were trying to attract talent from Asia. So for me, it was very natural to, come to Singapore and continue working in the higher education and research field, especially in a place like NUS, that is one of the top universities in the world, and where, it's also very international. They have very interesting policies towards internationalization, the way, we are also in the ASEAN region. We are trying to create something similar to what's going on in Europe, even though it's very different, but there are some projects and policies that are aiming to that. So yeah, for me, it was a great opportunity not only to be in Singapore, but to explore the rest of Southeast Asia, and of course, working for Sciences Po opens up a lot of interesting opportunities as well, to not only work with higher education institutions, but to be in touch with, as I mentioned before, different type of local authorities in Singapore and the rest of Southeast Asia. So I would say that Singapore is an amazing place to explore the rest of the region as well. We have the best airport in the world that connect us with many different places, but it's very easy to to travel around Southeast Asia in a couple of days, and I guess that's also what a lot of companies are looking for when they decide to settle in Singapore.
Thank you, Mariana. Maybe later we will talk about the international dimension of Singapore, which is quite unique, I guess. Now I would like to introduce you to Danielle Nguyen. who is Senior E-commerce Manager at Bulgari. Can you please tell us your story?
Yes, of course. So basically, I'm French. So I grew up in France and I studied in Sciences Po. I graduated in 2004. And I've been an expat since 2006. So it's going to be about like 16 years of wandering around the world. I've lived and worked for many years in London, then in Hong Kong, and then now in Singapore. So for the past 4 years, we've settled in Singapore. And actually, funny story, is the second time I've lived in Singapore. First time was on my, don't know how you call it now, but the exchange year, which at my time was the second year. So I did my exchange at NUS and I had such a great time that I thought, okay, one day I'll come back, work and live in Singapore. So that's it. A few years later, I came here with my family.
Thank you, Danielle. And now I introduce you to Hugo Petit, who is Associate International Arbitration at Hogan Lovells.
Hi, thank you, Camilla. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon in Europe. So as Camilla was saying, my name is Hugo Petit. I'm French. Both my parents are French, but I grew up here in Singapore as a child until I graduated high school, at the French high school here in Singapore. Then I went to Sciences Po. I went to the Le Havre campus for my third year abroad. These days is the third year. That's the exchange year, Danielle. So I went to Taipei in Taiwan. Then back to Sciences Po in Paris, where I did the law masters. Hence now being a lawyer. And I went through with the bar qualification in France, completed my training in Paris, Hong Kong, and then I moved here back to Singapore last October to work here now. And very happy to be back. Always very interested in Asia. My whole background has been in Asia, even when I was living in France. So I would definitely recommend Singapore to all of you, and I'll tell you more later with the question of this.
Thank you, Hugo. Maybe some of you have talked about Singapore as a hub, which is very close to many different places in Southeast Asia. So maybe can you please tell us, since you have lived also in other large cities, what is peculiar to Singapore, and why do you think it's an interesting place for a professional career? Maybe we can start again from Yvonne.
Right. So apart from Singapore, I lived in Beijing for my third year. I went to the University of Peking, Peking University in my third year. I have also lived in St. Gallen in Switzerland and Geneva. I was there for my fifth year actually. And then, yeah, of course, Paris. So I think these are the three big cities I would compare Singapore to. Of course, I've also traveled a lot in the region. I think what is interesting about Singapore and Asia in general, especially maybe from the European perspective, is it's very, very dynamic. I mean, it's a city that doesn't sleep. You get that in Shanghai, you get that in Hong Kong, and other Asian cities as well. But a lot of Europeans like to call Singapore the Asia Light because it's not as intense as Shanghai or Hong Kong, where people don't speak English fluently, or at least as a first language. So it's easy. I mean, it's an exciting city. There's lots of stuff to do, and at the same time, it's easy to acclimatize to or to get used to, because you I mean, everyone's most people, I wouldn't say everyone, maybe not the super old generation, but the young generation of Singaporeans, since the 1980s actually, English has been basically the main language taught in schools. So all people my age and slightly older, I guess, we grew up speaking English to our friends, and it was a way to get the different language groups. In Singapore, we have Chinese majority, but also a Malay and Indian minority, and it's a way to get the different ethnic groups to kind of blend together and to communicate with one another. So that's why that was the sort of policy imperative for English to be the the main language taught in schools. And yeah, so I mean, this is just to say that it's easy to get around in Singapore. And yeah, it's a dynamic job market. Then again, it may, I mean, I understand that France has a VIE program where it's easier for graduates to get sort of a 2-year posting or something in Singapore. So maybe that is one way you guys can consider applying to one of these programs and then coming to Singapore to that. So that's, I guess that's what I have for now. Maybe my fellow participants have other insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Gregor, what is your view about Singapore?
Yeah, I subscribe to what Yvonne say. I think, you know, it's an easy way to start in Asia. I will say either to start, you know, for easing English language. It's also a nice place to finish. My experience was, you know, I did Beijing, Hong Kong, Singapore. And I think also, you know, it's nice to have sometimes, you know, an experience, I will say, you know, in a more emerging market, India, China, Indonesia, before, you know, giving value actually to a company or international organization living in Singapore. I think it's also, you know, a very multicultural city, not only in the city, but whatever corporate, university you are working with. You will, just to tell, you know, I work as a private banker, just to tell in my floor of 100 people, we have something around 48 nationalities, something like this. So you know, I have Korean, Japanese around me, Filipinos, Singaporean, of course, Chinese, Taiwanese, American, Canadian, Swiss. So it's it's kind of incredible. 40 is around out of 500 people actually, not only in my floor, but that's amazing. The people living here, and also, you know, the level of education. You know, Singapore is interested at. So I think it's nice also as a junior to come and getting challenged in the international world. And it's an easy way to do it. So yeah, it's what I would recommend also, you know, Singapore, a bit like when you go to London or New York. So and especially for bank industry, but also luxury, shipping, but also, you know, university or international organization. I think that's, you know, a very interesting spot.
Thank you, Gregor. Danielle, what is your view about Singapore?
Yes, basically the same. I really, I follow Yvonne and Gregor about how cosmopolitan the city is and how easy it is to just get integrated into like the society and the companies that you work for. So I work for Bulgari, which is part of LVMH, so a luxury multinational. And I work in the regional office. So our region covers Southeast Asia and Oceania. So Singapore is like naturally the like the heart of the Southeast Asia region, and for us and many other companies. So that's why, you mentioned the word hub, and that's really, really relevant. So we're the center point where we radiate and work with the market surrounding us. And also, as Yvonne mentioned, it's a very vibrant region. So the economy is developing. People are like, I mean, I sell goods, so people are spending. So there's a lot of dynamism, which is really exciting, and a lot of opportunities as well. So so when I compare it with my previous role in London, it's true that that dynamics that you have in Singapore and the region is great. It's phenomenal.
Thank you, Danielle. And what about you, Hugo? What is your view? And especially since you grew up in Singapore, maybe you can also tell us if you notice an evolution, a change in the life there.
So I fully subscribe to everything that Yvonne, Gregor, and Danielle have said. the fact that it's in the heart of Southeast Asia culturally makes it a great place. Like Yvonne and Hugo were saying, it's a mix of different cultures, and it's quite easy to travel around the region, and you'll be doing that often for your jobs. Like Danielle was saying, a lot of regional hubs are based in Singapore. But also in your day-to-day life, a lot of people like to fly away on the weekend and travel, explore the region, or not necessarily fly, but take your car, drive up to Malaysia. How has it evolved? It kept growing every year when I was here as a kid, and it hasn't stopped. COVID hit the whole world pretty hard, hit Asia quite hard when it started. Singapore did a good enough job of managing it and is now fully back into booming mode. How it compares with other cities, I stayed only 6 months in Hong Kong, but I know Hong Kong a little bit. There's a sentiment that Hong Kong, the mood isn't as optimistic in Hong Kong, for instance, and I haven't been in mainland China for a very long time, but the mood maybe also isn't as optimistic because of the uncertainties politically, the stringent health measures that were only lifted very recently. Singapore has a very bright outlook in the way companies and the government here sell it, and the mood is definitely buoyant. We'll come to that, I think. That also means in daily life, crazy expensive rents, because everyone's here now. A lot of people moved from China or Hong Kong, moved here. Now that China and Hong Kong are reopening, people are going back there a little bit. But as Gagal was saying, industry-wise, the luxury market, Gagal and Danielle, the luxury market, the retail market is still booming, shipping is booming. And even for me, and I guess Yvonne, you'll be seeing that as well, in international law and the professional services industry, Singapore is acting again as a hub for all companies in the region. So I do dispute resolution as a lawyer, and every company with a contract in Southeast Asia then comes to Singapore to get legal services in relation to those operations around the region. So there really are many industries for which Singapore is an important place to be. So job opportunities would be there for many of you who would be looking at Singapore.
Hugo and Mariana, maybe also you can give us an opinion about the role of Singapore in higher education. Is it also a hub for the region from your viewpoint?
Yes, definitely. So, I agree with all that's been said. And one of the things, one of the reasons why we came here too, it was Singapore is like Asia for beginners, right? So if you want to set up partnerships, start building connections in Southeast Asia, then being based in Singapore is a very good way to do it. It is a hub for higher education and research because, as I said before, we have NUS, that is a top university, but we also have NTU, that is an amazing university as well, two very large and high-level comprehensive universities. We also have the National Research Foundation, Singapore National Research Foundation, that basically invests. It's a governmental agency that the Prime Minister's office that invests significantly in research in Singapore. And attracts a lot of talent from overseas. So we have something, for example, that is called the Create Campus, in which you have top universities from around the world, like MIT, Cambridge, Jiao Tong in China, Berkeley, and the French CNRS that are based within this campus Create. And they receive a lot of funding from the government to work on issues that are relevant for Singapore, but also for the world, like global warming, artificial intelligence, cities of tomorrow. So it is an amazing place for higher education and research. There's a lot that can be done. Very easy to implement projects, and it's a very good connection with the rest of Southeast Asia. So I would say that a lot of industries are very relevant for Singapore. Singapore for me is a very unique place because it's a city-state, because of the characteristics of this city-state. So it's very easy to implement projects if these projects are relevant for Singapore. This is something you have to keep in mind. Of course, the banking industry is extremely important. Everything that is shipping, IT, research, law, because it's an important hub for international arbitration. Then if you want to be, if you want to work for an NGO, it's better that you go to Cambodia, for example, or Vietnam, right? Because it's you have opportunities here to work in the non-profit sector, but you'll have much more to do if you are in other places in the region than here. But there are a few opportunities in terms of international organizations as well. There are not many. There is more like a regional hub for the UN in Bangkok, where you have several UN agencies. Here you have international organizations like the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, that has a like a large office in Singapore. You have Interpol. Yvonne, maybe you can help me with.
I think so I have a friend working in the World Bank. They have a small office as well.
They have a small offices, yeah.
Infrastructure projects,
yeah. UNDP also has a small office. So you find the small offices of international organizations, but I think more like the regional hub. If you want to go for the UN system, then it would be more Bangkok than Singapore.
Thank you, Mariana. And what about work-life balance in Singapore? We can start from Yvonne.
I think it really depends on the job. I mean, yeah, I think it's really hard to say for generally, but of course, I mean, in Asia, I think people just work harder. That's the culture compared to Europe, and we have less holidays. I mean, I think that's a fact. But it would depend on the job and the sector. And I guess one thing is that if you want to go for a short trip out of Singapore, like a weekend trip, it's very easy. You can just 2 hours or 3 hours and you're in Bali or back, Malaysia, Penang, Bangkok. I mean, these are just, all these places are just a couple of hours away. So, I mean, it's work hard and play hard, I would say. I mean, if you have the capacity and the willingness to do so. Yeah, but it depends on the individual, it depends on the sector, so it's hard to say. Yeah.
Thank you. And what about Gregor?
Yes, I think it's what Yvonne said. It depends really. Singapore can fit any time of lifestyle. I would say you can work out and play hard as a single young people joining here. You can there is everything to set up also family. I think for family arrangement is also good. I think the main attraction is to be able to you have at least 20-30 destinations with a direct flight where you can go at reasonable cost, to Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar, even more exotic place like Bhutan, for example, are almost direct, or Papua New Guinea or Australia is not that far. So that's also nice if you come for 1, 2, 3 years to spend a bit of time actually to visit around. But I think inside the city as well, the city is relatively small. Make it convenient. That means I don't think you can be at more than 20-30 minutes from your work. Everything is very vegetal. Everything is environmental friendly. Actually, Singapore government make sure you have a lot of garden. You have relatively less pollution, not so much of car, compared to the number of people. On paper, it's one of the most dense city per inhabitant, but the feeling you have, especially compared to Hong Kong, I mean, it's much less noisy, less vertical, more space, access to the sea, a couple of beach actually in the south. Also, you know, you have this horrible tanker you see at the horizon, but it's and you need also to consider how you like the season and the climate, because you know it's a relatively 23 to 25 degrees Celsius flat all season. There is no winter here, with the weather a bit humid maybe. But that means, you know, yeah, for people who doesn't like, you know, winter, basically that, you know, that's also the place to be, because it's always, you know, yeah, sunny, a bit of tropical rain from time to time, but it's in general, you know, hot climate. So it's more for people who like the south, I would say. I would say people are generally nice and friendly, you know, both local population or internal population. There is a lot of respect across culture. And I think the government also want to respect, you know, there is no specific, because it's so dense in terms of multiculturalism, that there is also the government makes sure, you know, you have a high degree of respect across culture. You know, racism is very legalized in Singapore. So you know, there is a good understanding of this, you know, across, you know, the population and the way you work. It's also a very safe city, probably one of the safest city in the world, on which, you know, yeah, there is no real, you know, hot district. There is, you know, very limited, yeah, degree of physical violence. Also, you know, you have advertising everywhere to advise that, you know, low crime doesn't mean no crime. But it's also, you know, yeah, very safe environment for people, you know, who care about this. So overall, yes, the condition of work and it has been, you know, rewarded by several ranking. It's almost you know, perfect. But again, you know, depends what lifestyle you want and also, you know, your particular taste.
Thank you, Gregor. I think you could also apply for the tourism office of Singapore, since you promoted really, really well. What's about you, Mariana? What is your impression about work-life balance if you traveled in the region?
Yeah, well, again, you know, here, I mean, the work culture is very intense. So you're expected to not necessarily, well, right now, you know, it's like flexible, like most places in the world, you know, you can work from home, but you are expected to, you know, to reply to emails or whenever. I would say like my experience is very different from France. Like, you know, whenever I send an email I work, of course, a lot in connection with France, right? So I have to send 3-4 emails before I get an answer. That's unacceptable in Singapore. You know, you send an email and you have to reply. I mean, if you reply the day after, then you have to apologize, basically. So we expect you to be, you know, very responsive in many ways. And yes, we do work a lot. Even, you know, late in the evening, reply on emails on weekends, and if you have, I mean, I also work for NUS college, and you know, my students are expecting me to meet with them in the evenings or sometimes the weekends, or things that are very unimaginable in France, for example, right? So that's the case in Singapore. Then it's a great place to have a family. So most of you, I don't know, because I cannot see your faces, but well, probably you are very young. But if you have children and young children, or I have an 8-year-old and a teenager, and when we got here, my kids were very young, and it's an amazing place to raise a family because of many of the things that we said. I mean, the weather, it's, you know, pretty much the same all year long, even though we have like the rainy season, or like fresher, I would say. It's not raining like in other places in Southeast Asia. But the weather is nice if you like hot weather, but it could also be challenging, extremely humid and hot. So I think Gregor said something between 23 and 25. I think it's more like 27 and 34.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 34. Yeah. So it can be extremely challenging if you are, I mean, I have visitors from France all the time, and they struggle a lot, because they are not, of course, inside you have AC, you have air conditioning, and, you can handle it very well. But outside you have to get used to it. And personally, I like the weather. I like the humidity and the, and the hot weather compared to the weather in Paris, for example, but it's not for everyone. Yeah. And again, it's very safe place, great education for kids. So no, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're, so I think you can have different sort of types of lives in Singapore, different type of lifestyles, depending on, your age and what you're looking for. If you're young and you don't have children, then you can go out very often. There is quite a nice cultural life. I mean, of course, it's not Paris, that's for sure, but we have museums. There are, now, well, we struggled a little bit during the pandemic, like everywhere else, but, there are a lot of festivals. So you can see like film festival from different countries, events that are organized all the time, concerts, almost every day of the year. So it's nice. I mean, you have a lot of things to do. So I never get bored in Singapore.
Thank you, Mariana. What about you, Danielle?
Yeah, well, a lot of has been said, and I agree. And for me, like, there's one word that characterizes like life in Singapore. It's efficiency. So it's about, like transportation, the fact that it's compact. So you never waste your time, basically. And that time that you don't waste, you get it back to do other things, like spend more time with your family, and therefore try to get that balance, even if you work a lot. So that's really, that's nice. And it's so convenient. So I have a young child myself, and basically like finding a space in a school, like it's not an issue. Whether like I hear friends in Paris, they are struggling, like everything is easy here, and therefore I have less headache basically, and I can do more things without like having to worry about all these things. So I think like that's where the balance gets right for Singapore.
Thank you, Danielle. And what is your view, Hugo?
No, I think a lot has been said, and I really agree. It's good. We've covered many things. I think for families, it's great. I grew up here, so I know how great it is as a kid growing up here. And I agree, it's efficient and it's comfortable. It's Asia light, but it's safe, it's clean, it's efficient. It's so comfortable. Life is very comfortable. So then you work a lot, yes. And I don't know how it was before the pandemic, but one thing I have noticed since being back in Asia working, maybe more of an intense culture in some ways than in France. But as Yvonne was saying, that's very industry and team specific even, but also a very different rhythm than in France. In France, if you leave before 7:30, people will joke that you took half the day off, right? Depending what job you're doing. But here, people, especially I think since the pandemic, it's very flexible. People will leave the office early, will go home, have dinner. A lot of people will have dinner earlier as well. And then they'll pick up emails in the evening. But a lot of people go home early, and that flexibility paired with the efficiency that Danielle was speaking about means that you do get time to spend time at home, spend time with your family, spend time with your friends, albeit the work culture is intense. And then what to do during your free time if you do strike that balance. Again, I agree with everything that's been said. I'm happy that Mariana mentioned museums, culture, theaters, festivals. They do exist. People like to criticize. I'll just put it out there very early on. And I think, but Gregor hinted to it as well. Some people say Singapore is boring. Some people don't like it, especially at a younger age, if you're just starting your career. Like Gregor said, I think it's good to discover other places in Southeast Asia, emerging markets, and people will tell you, oh, Hong Kong is more fun. It's more adventurous if you're in Bangkok, Hong Kong, Vietnam, wherever it is you want to be. Yes, but I mean, people here travel to all those places a lot, be it for work or leisure. And living here is just really nice. And you don't necessarily have to be bored. There is more to Singapore. I think that's my key message all the time, even when I speak with friends. There's more to Singapore than just the shiny buildings. And I'm sure people in Dubai would say the same thing. And I don't even know Dubai. But, you know, Dubai, people will tell you, it really is a lot of shiny stuff. In Singapore, there's all the shiny stuff, but there is a lot of very nice things if you dig deeper than that. The parks, the gardens, the greenery that Gregor was talking about, the culture, and then all the bars and the restaurants. Again, as a younger professional, it's all very pricey. We're gonna get, I think, to tips for those of you who are looking at moving here. I think it's important to know what your budget is gonna be, because the city generally can be pricey to enjoy. Not everything is expensive, but restaurants, bars, things like that, cultural events will be expensive often. And finally, circling back though to what we said earlier, because the economy is booming, salaries will often enable you here to enjoy all of this. And if you manage to strike that balance on your budget and on your free time, it really is a super nice place to live.
Thank you, Hugo. We have a first question, very concrete. How is the healthcare system, taxation system compared to France?
It's very simple. So here you're just taxed according to your income, and it's really transparent. You can like look it up. So depending on your tax bracket, it's much lower than in France for sure. Like there's no comparison. I don't know what's the maximum. I mean, I'm not at the maximum.
24%.
24%, but it's like when you have like it's above 1 million US a year. Yeah. So basically, I don't think it concerns so much junior. I would say for 100K euro salary, you know, it will be around probably 8 or 10% personal income. Tax, something like this, maybe. Also, it's the employer basically who are preparing your tax. So you just log on into the tax system, you click yes, and that's it. So it's very. We come back to the efficiency. It's very, very efficient. There is not so much tax deduction because, you know, it's a system where, you know, you have shift personal income with no tax deduction. So there is no need for tax lawyer, difficult, you know, it's very, very easy and transparent and relatively cheap. And I would say, you know, that the quality of public services for the price you pay is extremely good. That means when you see the state of infrastructure, when you see even during COVID, the help that the government has provided to the employee, Singaporean or not, you know, that they managed to pay up to 70 or 80% of the salary of people of lower and middle classes. You realize actually that the administration is very, very efficient as well. And that, you know, what you pay is basically, you know, you get extremely good service for this. Healthcare was the other question. I think, you know, here you have a bit of public healthcare, but it's essentially private. So it's more a bit like an American system, I would say. That's compared to France, is a bit probably a bit different. But I will say, as if you come to join Singapore in a relatively large organization, the company will pay for you an insurance, and I will say most of the insurance paid by the company generally relatively generous. So you won't generally have to pay that much when you go to see the doctor, or even if you have, you know, you're getting hospitalized. But again, it really depends, you know, how generous is your employer for your insurance.
Yeah, actually, it really depends on your employer. So you have to be, you have to look really carefully, because I've worked for several companies, and from one insurance like plan to the other, there are things that might not, like, for example, in France, you get your full dental and your glasses, for example, they're fully covered. In Singapore, it's rarely the case. So you have to cater, I think, for health. If you're in a good health, then good for you, you never go to the doctor. But then if you have things which are a bit more complicated, then look in details. And I would say that it's still more expensive, because if you have, even if it's partially covered, it is going to be expensive. So like I would put a big caveat on health, like you need to be prepared. Yeah.
And I will add something. Healthcare is fantastic in Singapore, in the sense that, you know, we do have a system like in France in terms of health providers. I mean, there are a lot of government hospitals that are really, really high quality. And personally myself, I always go to the university hospital, because this is the one that I trust, because I think this is where you have the best doctors, and they provide very good services. So the healthcare system works perfectly well. The only thing is it's very costly when you are a foreigner. If you're a Singaporean, you have access to the basically public healthcare. Basically, you have like a fund in which you contribute, and, you know, is covered for you. But if you are a foreigner, you have to make sure that at least you're well covered for everything that is in hospital like care, right? Everything that is, if you have to just go to the GP because you're not feeling well, that's very cheap. It's like, I don't know, $20 or something like that. It's not costly at all. But if you need to have a surgery, or you realize that you have a condition, it's better that you have a good healthcare insurance that covers you for all that, especially because the day that you have something in Singapore, you have to declare it. So let's say that, you know, you come here, you have an insurance that it doesn't cover very well. And then all of a sudden you realize that you have a condition, and you have to change your insurance because your current health insurance doesn't cover you. Then you have to declare that you have that, and you will be exempted from. It's basically like in the US. So my advice would be, if you come to work Singapore, make sure that at least for everything that is inpatient care, hospitalization, you have an insurance that covers you very well. Yeah.
Thank you, Mariana. I think we have a question about accommodations. So if you have other tips, I'm looking in the chat, and there are many websites, but if you also have other tips about accommodation.
So I think when you're an expat, in general, accommodation is the trickiest part of moving to Singapore and living in Singapore, because Hugo said it, everybody wants to come here. A lot of people have moved from Hong Kong, China, and other countries from the region. So prices, like rentals, have gone up, and it's not surprising to have like same rental up by 50 to like 100%. So it's like it wasn't cheap, and now it's becoming really steep. So you have to do your research. So Property Guru, as Yvonne mentioned, is the like go-to place where you find the vacant flats or houses, and you can check the prices. I mean, it's really well done, so you can get all of it. It also have even, like, you can see how much people have paid for the most recent contracts. So it's pretty, like, again, super efficient, very transparent, but it's, it is expensive. So it depends on where you want to live, what kind of accommodation you're looking for, but do your research. And it does take time because there are less properties on the market. therefore like searching for a flat. I remember when I moved here, so 4 years ago, basically within 2 weeks, I found a place. Now, friends who are looking to move to another place, and they've been looking for like a month and a half, and they still have. So tricky.
To answer your question, Arthur, I wouldn't recommend getting something permanent until you move here and you get a chance to visit places and get a feeling for yourself. Like Hugo was saying, check out Singafrog to reach out to people, or there are hostels, whatever, get something temporary. And then maybe, cram 3 visits a day if you have to for 2 weeks, but get a feel of the market for yourself. There are still things here. There are still places that are available. There are opportunities, but you have to dig for them. And generally the market is bad, like Danielle said. So I think come here and have a look for yourself before signing anything permanent, because then you'll be signing a 1 year, 2 year permanent lease that you can't get out of. So
thank you for your tips. And maybe in terms of salary, there was a question about someone who has nearly 5 years of experience. Which average will you say would be acceptable for have also a comfortable life in Singapore?
It's a very difficult question because, it really depends industry. Of course, I would say finance is paying probably one of the most, following by law, consulting, luxury, commodities, so it really depends, what the sector, the level of experience. And also, obviously, if you have family, the price can be multiple. So we saw, people who had, a comfortable life, living alone, start to marry, get some kids, and it's generally at a stage that some people, who didn't really get the promotion they would get, decide, to come back. We saw a lot of foreigners recently, a big move is we saw some people who think, they will live better in another region, moving to Phuket in Thailand, moving to Bali, especially, for people who can work from home. So you see actually a new generation of people who decide sometimes to just stay here for a few days a month, and otherwise, go to live in in Indonesia, in Thailand, around. So it doesn't really, that's really, the effect of COVID. I would say, it didn't really, it wasn't really the case before, but also, due to the fact of inflation. But I would say, with 5 years experience at 13 years old, generally in the industry, I would say, around 120,000 Sing dollar. That means, 10,000 Sing dollar, 7,000-8,000 euro a month. I think it's a good base salary probably. But I might not be. Some other participants might not be agree with me. But that's what. After you have also, the bonus is very dynamic as well. So depending your industry, you can seek, from 2 to 6 months, additional salary on the top of your base salary based on your performance. So there is I think the performance of the staff is also, more remunerated. I think also, for very experienced people that cannot be replaced, or where Singapore is looking for it, like specific engineering, for example, etc. I think there is a very dynamic market locally. So you can also be poached from one company to another and suddenly be paid plus 20, plus 30, plus 40% what you were paid. So really, the first experience can lead sometimes to much more income if successful, and if a competitor needs you. And I think in that sense, actually, is much more dynamic. I would say something is, sometimes, we always speak about the comfortable expatriate contract. But local contract can be also very good because, as we mentioned, the taxation is very low locally. there is a dynamism in the market. So, you know, much more pay increase a year. I would say it's not rare to to see, you know, some company, especially with the inflation we have, to have, you know, a 5, 7, 8% average, you know, pay increase a year. And maybe, you know, in this context, maybe more 10, 12% this year. So that's also a differentiator from France. But you know, as Hugo mentioned, you know, be sure to be paid because the life is expensive. So be sure that, you know, you have a decent budget to cover actually, your accommodation and your trip outside Singapore and you know, a bit of nice bar and restaurant here. Otherwise, you know, it can be very depressing.
Thank you, Rodor.
I'm conscious we're getting to the end of this, just maybe a really quick one. And it's something, just look into it if you're looking at moving here. As Hugo was mentioning, the needs of the different industries, look at visas long and hard before you come here. The government has very specific requirements for which industries it wants foreign talent to come and work here. And visas have been tightening. There are still many job opportunities, I feel, but check it out long and hard what visa would be available for you and what visa your company can get you, because certain industries will still be hiring a lot of foreign employees. Other industries are saturated and you might make plans to move only to be told a few months later that your visa has been rejected. So that's one thing you have to be looking at before you start making plans.
Thank you, Hugo. I think we have run out of time, but maybe there is space for a last question or a last comment. Well, I don't see any other particular questions. So thank you very much. It was very nice to talk to you, to hear about all these opportunities that Singapore can offer. Thank you for your time. And if you're interested in the region, the next episode will be living and working in Indonesia, which is not that far from Singapore. So I will put the link in the chat if you want to register. And you're all invited to join us. It will be on the 9th of May. Thank you very much, and enjoy your evening if you're in Singapore, and enjoy your afternoon if you are in Europe. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.